Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube. I am Joe Atticus Inch. Welcome to today's episode of Poet Love. Now, hopefully you are actually seeing an episode of Poet Love that hasn't been messed with due to copyright restrictions. Yeah, my bad. When I decided to do a web series, especially a sort of a review web series, it was something that did not cross my mind, in the fact that it never crossed my mind that it would actually happen. I thought my show would be too small for them to even give a shit about. But I was wrong. They cover everyone. So on that note, I just want to say, I do not own the rights to Mississippi by Bob Dylan. That song is of course owned by Columbia Records and Bob Dylan. If you would like to listen to the whole song of Mississippi, you can either A, buy his album Love and Theft, is track 2. You could buy his album Telltale Signs of the Bootleg Series Volume 8, which actually has 2 different versions of Mississippi, or you could download it legally. I repeat, you can download it legally through proper resources. Yes. And on that note, let's get into today's episode. Now, today's poet is going to be interesting, because if you've watched the past episodes, you've realized there is a sort of setup to each episode. Each episode usually goes like this: introduction, reveal of poet, professional biography, and then personal antidote. Now, with the few exceptions of Bob Dylan and Tom Waits, because they're fucking Bob Dylan and Tom Waits, and there's no way I'm ever gonna meet them. And if I did, I have no idea what I would do. And Jack McCarthy, due to his passing. I've met and interacted with every poet I've talked to. Some of them only once, some of them more than once. Some of their impacts have been small right now and are growing, or some have just been so impactful to me right now. That does not mean I am only fans of poets that I've met. This slam scene that I am apparently in, sometimes I debate my actual placement in slam, but is huge, and there is no way I could ever really meet everyone who does this across the country and across the world. But there are always going to be a few names that stick out, because for me, I may have not met them personally, but I have a good feeling of who they are as people through the way they are as writers, and through the 6 Degrees stories that I've heard through various other friends. And today's poet is definitely the top person in the slam scene right now who I have not met, but would feel really honored to meet. His name is Adam Falkner. Now, I apologize if the next couple minutes are a little choppy, because I have to do Adam's biography off his website. I know little about Adam, other than he's apparently a great guy and he's a phenomenal poet. But there's more to him that I've learned after drawing from the Magic Shoebox. Let's just get down to the basics of Adam professionally. He is a poet from New York who's done numerous slam teams, the numerous features. He's been published in various literary magazines. He's been seen on HBO, BET, heard on public radio. So he's got that kind of background to him. But looking on his website after I drew him to learn more about this, so this episode wasn't short per se. He is, as a person, a really well dignified young man per se. Just a few little things. He is a National Associate for the Prison Creative Arts Project, which is something my knowledge of it is limited, but based on that limited knowledge, I support fully. That is a project that at this moment, with my limited knowledge, I will always say has my back. He's also a Ginsberg Scholar, which I've never personally heard of, but it has Ginsberg in it, so it's got to be good. And the recipient of the Martin Luther King Jr. Spirit Award in Higher Education. He is also a teacher of 10th grade creative writing at the Academy for the Young Writers in Brooklyn, New York, and I always loved the idea of slam poets who are also teachers, and I'm going to discuss that later in this episode. And he's also the founder of the Dialogue Arts Project, which is a project to incorporate creative writing and performance into a teaching style, into teaching styles. And from what I've learned through his website, which is www.adamfalknerarts.com, I am going to say has my full support. My endorsement doesn't mean much right now, but check out the Dialogue Arts Project. He's been published, as I said before. His book's 10 for Fahim. He is on penmanship books. And I guess that's basically all I can say about Adam professionally that I could find. And now this is the point where the personal antidote would be. So, but I guess the only thing that I can say, because I never met Adam as a person, is just my relationship with his work. Adam is honestly, I've been listening to Adam's stuff for maybe about 8 months. Maybe a year. We'll say a year. Good. Because I know he doesn't tour, or at least I don't believe he tours much, and I'm too poor to ever go to New York as much as I would like to. So the only impacts I've ever had, the only resources I've ever had to Adam's work has been on YouTube and through various friends. But the thing about Adam is his work is some of the most creative stuff that I've ever heard. Adam Falkner is probably one of my top 10 favorite poets in the slam scene right now. I mean, look at him.
Those boyish good looks, that fashion sense. I mean, honestly, what would you think?
You see something like that and you don't expect some of the stuff that comes out of him. Some of my favorite stuff, honestly, my two favorite poems, and I want to hear more in the series that he's working on. I first heard about this series through the YouTube videos of his Page Meets Stage. And he was talking about the impact of prominent classic hip-hop albums. And the year they were released. And the impact that they had on him. Because, can we go back to that picture again? Would you believe this guy is a hip-hop head? I don't know how fully hip-hop head he is, but based on those two poems alone, based on those two poems alone, I believe me and him, at least, are on the same level of hip-hop heads. Maybe he's probably way more than I am. But the thing, too, is because he has these two poems where he's talking about how old he was when the Wu-Tang Clan's Enter the 36 Chambers was released, which was either 93 or 94, which I've always debated in myself. I should really look at the back of the CD that I own of it and figure out the real date, to how old he was and the impact of when Jay-Z's The Blueprint came out in 2001, which I actually do remember when The Blueprint came out and all the hype for it. But because of these time frames and the fact that also it was in the timeline of how old he was in 2001 and then how old he was in 93, 94, he captures them both perfectly. Like, when he's talking about first hearing the Wu-Tang Clan at that age, talking about holding the glass up to his brother's door, and talking about using words heard on spelling tests, I think is just brilliant. But captures that moment in a child's life where, at least of my generation, that moment was a pinnacle moment. And the same thing, you get the same thing, but an older Adam with The Blueprint. Now, I talked about how he's also a teacher. And this is actually a good segue to the fact that I can get this out, that I really do love it when I hear certain slam poets are teachers. And Adam is definitely one who does not take that theory for granted. When poets are teachers and they actually write about poems about their students or interactions they had with their students, I think are really great personal touches to the scene, and it's something that I personally enjoy hearing. And Adam has some poems like that you know are not just scenarios created in his head. The best example I can give you for that is the war in Baltimore. I don't want to spoil any of the story of that poem, but check it out. But the interaction given in that poem between Adam and his student is real. You can imagine it. You can close your eyes and imagine it like a movie, but a real life movie. Adam's work is also, he's got a great sense of humor in his work. It's shown in the year the Wu-Tang drops. It's shown in a lot of his opening poems. He's definitely one of those great poets who definitely can switch a poem real quickly, where it can open up real silly or goofy or just look like it's going to be a straight comedy poem, but then switches it and it has a really serious message to it. I love My Father's Family. These are just some of the poems of his that I've at least heard most. Thank You with Gene and Verley. So yeah, I would definitely say check out Adam's work. Check out his website, www.adamfalknerarts.com. I'm just gonna say, honestly, I cannot wait for the day that I actually do meet Adam. Because based of my envisioning of him as a person via his poems, and via hearing the stories of the others who have met him, everything's just gonna finally connect when I listen to an Adam poem. So I guess on that note, there's nothing really much more I can say about Adam Falkner. But right now, he's one of my favorites. I haven't met him, but it will be an honor when I do. And on that note, we're going to pull out the magic shoebox and we're going to draw a name for tomorrow's poet. So until then, you can keep pondering as we talk about another poet whose work I truly admire but I've never met. Let's call it not really a sequel, but a sequel. Until then, I'm Joe Atticus, reminding you to keep your pens moving, live long and prosper, and I will see you next time on Poet Love.